You want me to take a picture of you here?
Okay.
Let's say. Good. Okay. Jeep. Let's go. We're here in Chicago. Guys, look. There's the boat. The boat. We're gonna ride the boat. This is the shoreline sightseeing. Chicago River architecture. So this is my first time to ride the boat.
Then as that would bloom and then rot, the smell would permeate throughout these lands, and it's really all you can smell around here. And so we just kind of stuck with that name throughout time. So if you take it at face value and throw the rest away, that's what I could bring to it, right? So we can actually fast forward in time to about the late 1770s, and that's when we can track the first non-indigenous permanent settler making his way here. His name was Jean-Baptiste Pont du Sable. Pont du Sable was an immigrant of Haiti of French and African descent, whose mother was a Haitian slave and father a French mariner. When he first came to North America, he studied this. So that's how we honor him today in our store. That's the plan in the next few years. This is going to be known as 400 North Lakeshore Drive. And it's a beautiful residential building. I really like this kind of taper design backwards. And this is going to be, a conjunction of the two. But I also want to establish what was supposed to be here. If you go back to the early 2000s, there was a plan to design the Chicago Spire in the same lot space. The Chicago Spire is designed by an architect named Santiago Calatrava, about 2,000 feet tall. It was going to be the tallest skyscraper. That was all canceled in 2008 due to the housing market crash, financial crisis, and all that great stuff. So we never got that, and this is all repurposed lot space for new developers. So areas is going to be balconies for those residents up there. All right, now as we pass underneath Lakeshore Drive, we're going to have this. And I want to jump to the left side. This is probably one of the most visually striking buildings on the tour. Right over here. Blue, wavy glass. To Chicago. St. Regis is the third tallest skyscraper currently here in our city. This stands at about 1,191 feet tall, or if you're using metric, that's just about 363 meters. And this is also designed by an incredible architect. Her name is Jeannie Gang of Studio Gang Architecture Firm. Why? Because if the building is designed to be too stiff and rigid, when it gets hit with a large gust of wind, the building might crack the foundation and top. There are 2 floors worth of space that are kept open, and those are simply known as blow-through. Close to the lake, they needed additional methods of wind reduction. So it was added in, but I think it looks pretty darn good. It really adds to the visual aesthetic of this building. Let me also say, standard 1-bedroom condo will start you around $800,000 to $1 million.
Oh, wow.
A multi-level penthouse sold near the top a couple years back for an estimated $20.5 million, which I think is a little bit too much. I mean, I'm sure it's a fantastic view, some great amenities as well, but that's a hefty price point. Now, we also have lots of hotels in this area. Obviously, it's a lovely location next to the water. For example, here to our right, this is the Grand Sheraton Hotel. Like you see a triangle-shaped building of his on the north branch a little bit later. But just behind it, you can see that wave-like pattern cascading in a similar way, where you have the hotel at the bottom. Those middle space is going to be rented units, and then those top units are going to be those luxury condos. So, some more great work by Jeannie Gang. A lot of what you just done at Athletic Club in 1929. Now, the dome itself is a Moorish accent piece for the building, but sitting behind the dome is a group Big Red. This was their original headquarters. The building itself is broken up into 2 sections. Left side about 1921. Expansion to the right from 9,388 feet tall, or about 423 meters. It's a bit of architecture from 2009, designed by architect Adrian Smith. Adrian Smith is a very prolific and well-known architect around the world, actually. He's designed a lot of very tall skyscrapers. Actually, he designed the Burj Khalifa. The Burj Khalifa is roughly double the size of Trump Tower here. And that just shows you how tall skyscrapers have gotten and all these feats of engineering throughout the year. That's trying to complement the essence of what's already established in the city around it. So So take a look here. There are 3 setback patio balconies, and each one is designed to match the height of surrounding buildings in the area. For example, first setback lines up with of this project, and his goal was to entice middle-class workers to live in the city, but it was not desirable to do so. So to do that, he made sure to add in for your boat connected to the river with the outlook that one day it might be cruised. You have valet parking for your car at the bottom of each one of the towers. And then you gotta throw in some fun things like a bowling alley that's located still near the bottom of that first tower and still connected to the side of the second line. So since they pass underground, it restricts a lot of developments of the architecture, including 150 North Riverside. That's the upside down pencil building you can see there. This section where the north-south main branch combine. And so, yes, it's known as a municipal device. Very important to Chicago. You'll see it on a lot of these older buildings, libraries. Now, as we travel up the North Branch, we have a couple things to see. I want to start there to the side. Remember Harry Lease, the architect of the River or the Swiss Hotel? Well, he designed these as well, the River Cottages. You see much more diverse shapes and colors and patterns and initiation fee, as they call it. But then that gives you access to everything inside of Chicago. Not so much anymore downtown, which is better for both the quality of the river and the smell of everything around us. But this eventually got turned into residential. That happened at the turn of the 1970s, actually led by lead architect Harry Lease, same architect behind the River Cottages. But that's when it was being used as early day insulation for the freezer box. And they had no choice because it was all frozen solid. They had to wait an estimated 3 to 6 months. How do you deal with wind in the case of this building? Well, if you take a look up, there are no blow-through floors. It's actually using a method of inertial swash dampers. So basically, up there in the roof inside, there are 12 concrete containers that are filled with 160,000 gallons of water. But in that case, it's a large solid mass, usually something like concrete, connected to a pendulum at the top of the structure. As the wind hits inside, the pendulum swings, does the same thing to pull the building back and forth. Just know, this was a very complicated process to get this all in place. There's actually a giant bar. That is required because of the same ordinance we just talked about. It has to have a 30 feet setback to some extent. But they didn't want all this real estate space to go to waste. You can also notice alternating comedy and tragedy masks. That's pulled directly as inspiration from the Paris Opera House. But today, inside there is the second largest opera house in the United States. Seats right around 30. It's the same year that the stock market crashed and plunged us into the Great Depression. So in the 1930s, not looking so good. By the 1940s, we're getting into World War II. So that's roughly 2 decades worth of time with not a lot of new architecture. So then there's a pause on things. There's not a lot of new buildings. Part is they don't have to be white. They can also be brown box buildings and gray box buildings, but you get the idea. And by this point, you might be getting a little bit bored of these boxes. And to be fair, so was the city of Chicago. So finally, by the 1980s, that would complement the curve of the South Branch of the river. Last one I'll mention here is to our right. This one's known as the Mid-America Commodity Exchange. This is called structural expression. It can express its personality through its functionality in those X braces. That's from about 1971. But today, they have been updated throughout the years. So nowadays, one of those will also be about 1900 or so for a 1-bedroom. But you can see, I mean, even in the case, they have their own methods of power and Amtrak and Metro today. But this was decommissioned in 2011, and for now, it's left vacant and abandoned. There is no and Patrick O'Leary. And that is where the facts end and the rumors and urban legends begin. Because the river was heavily polluted. There's a thick layer of grease and oil coating the top, so it doesn't stop at the river. The river seems to, but they have full exhibits on the fair, the fire, the retail industry, and so much more. But alright, I'm done rambling. That's known as 235 North Van Buren. It's a residential building. The dots and dashes are balconies, but it's my favorite bit of contextualism on the tour. Why? Because the dots and dashes are designed to look like local Chicago traffic. And it's very accurate. Yeah, the dashes are like trucks, the dots are like cars. That statue is actually of the Roman goddess Ceres, the goddess of agriculture, and this building is known as the Chicago Board of Trade Building. It is where Chicago originally traded agricultural futures and auctions on the stock market when the building first opened in 1930. Want to know something crazy? That was once the tallest skyscraper in Chicago. For 35 years, until 1960, been there. It's always been part of the design. Well, something very similar to an antenna is a spire. At least they look very similar. So, for example, there's a spire on top of Trump Tower. There's a spire on top of the Burj Khalifa. A lot of it was just to update the space. It needs some touch-ups after hanging out here for a long time. But then a lot of it also was adding in this glass that wraps all the way around to open up the space to its surroundings and entice people. It doesn't really work here anymore, though, because, of course, Morton Salt no longer works inside there. They've been moving around the city. Actually, if you do some mental gymnastics, you can still kind of make it work. I bring this. Their offices are inside River Point Tower, aka the. Behind it, you do have pretty notable skyscrapers. We'll talk about these from left to right. 16 residential high-rise. In the middle, this is going to be the newest to the area. That's Salesforce Tower. Just got completed a couple years back in 2023. Now, just behind it, you can also see this curved glass building. This is some more contextualism going on. Same year as Gateway 74 that we saw in the South Branch, so it's following a lot of design philosophies. Curved glass, alternate color, coloring both the sky and water. You don't care about that. What you really care about is the fun fact that this is Ferris Bueller's dad's office building from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's his claim to fame. Now, jumping across once again, we get a very good view of the Merchandise Mart. And you can see from this angle, it's a massive building. Well, you're taking 1 million square feet worth of total space, or about 73 American football fields worth of office space. Okay? I'm like, I'm going to be able to move around. You got lots of space for these guys. I got you, no worries. That's why you choose short left. Now, as we keep on moving, I do think this is a pretty good time to really take a look around you, though, and just appreciate all this incredible stuff we have going on around. I'll tell you, we actually decided to reverse the current of the Chicago River. Now, you might be wondering how that's possible. Well, basically, push all your sewage water away and flush it down south towards St. Louis, Missouri for them to do it. And so the sewage could not be contributed solely to Chicago. And so, all right, looks like we're going to sit past this Odyssey boat. Although I must say, I've been on one of the Odyssey boats on the lake before, never the river boat, but you can actually dine on both the river and the lake. So, pretty fun. For the very top, that dome or cupola up there is now painted aluminum. Now, it used to be a fully terracotta clad building. It doesn't look right. It frustrates me, but that's the second point. It's going to be a little bit more rigid and structurally sound. A little bit. This is known as French Gothic Revival architecture, simply because the top area is modeled after the ruined Cathedral of Normandy. This entire building was a result of an international and architectural contest, when the Chicago Tribune newspaper was in search of the most beautiful office building in the world for their official headquarters. They received over 200 submissions in 1925. It is no longer the headquarters for the Chicago Tribune newspaper. They've had a rough go at things the last couple of years. Basically, it was their headquarters up until 2018, and then they moved out. This got turned in 1886. A lot of this land was not here. The lakefront started pretty much where Michigan Avenue is. He pretends to crash his speedboat along the sandbars. He goes to nearby property owners near the lakefront and he says,